So, what if I told you that one of the most common health problems for women is directly fueling one of the biggest public health threats our world is facing? It sounds disconnected, right? Well, today we're going to unpack this vicious cycle, where the treatment for a very personal problem is actually making a global crisis even worse.
All right, here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at just how common these infections really are. Then, we'll connect that to the massive global issue of antibiotic resistance. After that, we'll explore how the body is supposed to defend itself, see how our usual treatments can totally backfire, and finally, look at a new strategy that works with our bodies, not against them. So first up, let's get a real sense of the scale here. Because when we talk about gynecological infections, the numbers are, well, they're probably a lot bigger than you think.
Let's just put a number on it. A recent study looked at one single community in Vietnam and found that 37% of women had a vaginal infection. 37%. That's more than 1 in every 3 women. It's a staggering figure, and it really shows you just how prevalent this is on the ground. And you know, this wasn't just a one-off. When you look at data from all across Vietnam, you see this same story. Rates are consistently high. You've got nearly 27% in Gia Lai and over 21% in Da Nang. It's clear this is a persistent nationwide health challenge.
But here's where the problem gets really tricky. It's not just about getting one infection. It's when they become recurrent. And what that means is you're dealing with it 4 or even more times in a single year. This pattern of recurrence is what really kicks off the dangerous cycle we're here to talk about.
So how on earth does a personal health issue, even a recurring one, blow up into a global emergency? Well, the bridge between those two things is one very powerful and very common word: antibiotics.
The World Health Organization doesn't mince words here. They're calling antibiotic resistance one of the top 10 biggest threats to all of humanity. And think about why. Every single time we use an antibiotic, we're giving bacteria a chance to evolve and fight back. So when millions of women need antibiotics over and over for these infections, it's like we're running a massive global training camp for superbugs.
And the stakes? They are unbelievably high. Right now, projections show that by 2050, drug-resistant diseases could be killing 10 million people every single year. To put that in perspective, that's more deaths than from HIV/AIDS or malaria right now. We're littering on a trajectory back to a time when a simple cut or a common infection could be deadly.
Okay, so this all sounds pretty scary. But how is the body supposed to protect itself in the first place? Well, it turns out it has this incredibly smart and powerful defense system, its own personal ecosystem known as the vaginal microbiome.
It's actually a beautiful biological process. It all starts with estrogen, which helps build up a thick lining of cells. As old cells shed, they release a sugar called glycogen. This becomes the perfect food for good bacteria, specifically lactobacillus. And as these little guys eat the glycogen, they produce lactic acid. All that acid creates a protective environment that harmful bacteria just can't survive in. It's like a natural force field. So, you see, it's not about being totally sterile. It's all about keeping this delicate balance. An infection is basically just a signal that the ecosystem has been thrown off and that natural protective shield has been compromised.
And that brings us right to the heart of the paradox. Because the very thing we use to fight the infection, the antibiotic, is often what ends up causing the whole cycle to start over again.
Now, antibiotics are really good at their job at first. You see that 85% initial cure rate for bacterial vaginosis, and that looks great. But here's the huge catch. A year later, almost 60% of those women will have the infection again. And why is that? Well, because the antibiotic is like a bomb. It wipes out the bad bacteria, for sure, but it also takes out all the good guys, our protective lactobacillus army, along with them. So this really boils down to two totally different philosophies. The old antibiotic way is kind of like a scorched earth policy, just kill everything. But the newer probiotic approach is more like trying to restore an ecosystem. The goal isn't to kill, it's to rebuild the body's natural defenses to stop the problem from coming back. And that's how you get trapped in the vicious cycle. You get an infection, you take antibiotics, which damages the microbiome. That leaves you vulnerable to another infection, which means you need more antibiotics. And every time that wheel turns, the risk of resistance goes up, the body's defenses get weaker, and the patient is just stuck. So how do we break this cycle? Well, the new strategy isn't about using a bigger bomb. It's about calling in reinforcements for the body's own army of good bacteria. Now, I know what you might be thinking. It seems a little strange, right? How can a pill that you swallow possibly help an infection in a totally different area of the body? It's a great question,
and the science behind it is actually pretty cool.
So here's how that journey works. Specially chosen probiotics are tough enough to survive the acid in your stomach. They then travel all the way through your intestines, and once they get to the rectum, they can actually migrate over to the neighboring vaginal area and start to repopulate it with the good bacteria it needs to rebuild that protective shield.
And we know this works. The data is pretty clear. In one clinical study, women were treated with antibiotics, but one group also took an oral probiotic. The results? They were dramatic. The cure rate for the probiotic group shot up to 88%. That's nearly double the group that didn't get it. They didn't just get better, their defenses were rebuilt, making it much less likely to happen again.
You know, what this all points to is a huge paradigm shift in medicine. Instead of waging this endless war on microbes, a war, by the way, that we are starting to lose, the new thinking is all about cultivating a healthy internal garden. If we take care of our microbiome, we allow our body to do what it naturally does best, protect itself.
And that really leaves us with a powerful final thought. In a world where our so-called wonder drugs are starting to fail us, maybe the most advanced medical technology we have isn't something we can build in a lab. Maybe it's been inside us all along. Could learning to restore our body's own ecosystem be the real key to staying healthy in the future?